Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. Liftoff.
Hello. What is up, guys? This is Hunter Klein bringing you this week's episode of Interplanetary Monkeys, episode number 54. Guys, welcome to 2021, where the world returned back to normal, or that is what I'm telling myself will happen right now. All right. I do believe that at least by the end of the year, things will be back to normal, and this FU 2020 movement will be justified, but it's looking like we are going to be here for another couple months at the very least. Like I've said somewhat from the beginning, guys, it's probably going to start tapering off at around that 6-month mark, right? That June, July mark. We should see vaccinations being readily distributed, and some type of herd immunity emerging from our populations, and humans can return back to their life, to their normal lives of partying on the weekends and trudging through the weekdays and trying to figure out how we can make the most out of this human experience, guys. How we can make the most out of this human experience. To be honest, guys, I don't really notice much of a difference. Right? The only thing that's changed is I write 2021 instead of 2020 in my journal. All right. Not much has changed for me. I don't feel like I've been rebirthed, like it seems like a lot of people are going through. I don't feel like it's a new year, new me, as a lot of people are saying and going through. Okay, I'm still, not much has changed. There's not a lot of New Year's resolutions that I need to go through. Like, there's not a lot of improvement that I need to do that's bullshit. There is a lot of improvement I can do, but there's not one big thing that I can be like, this is what I'm doing in 2021. Of course, there's improvement I could do. My time management could increase. All right. I could be more efficient with my time and how I'm being productive and things like that. That's probably the biggest area of improvement, but I don't need a New Year's resolution to do that, guys. We're always focusing on it and always trying to tune it for improvement. Okay, one of the biggest things that I experienced last week was a really complete overhaul of how I thought about the pod. Okay, and it came from a video that I watched. Okay, so I had YouTube once again came to the rescue and suggested that I watch a video of a guy named, let me look, Jordan Harbinger. All right, and he's one of the biggest podcasters in the world. His podcast gets millions of downloads a week. And he came on to my podcast distribution company and talked to them about the nature of podcasts. And I think what Jordan said in this interview cascades through all passions and all journeys similar to that of a podcast, a YouTube channel, a Twitch stream, things like these creative endeavors that you start from the bottom in a very large field of people, in a very large arena of people that are doing the same thing that you are. And one of the biggest things that just kind of blew my mind and was responsible for this revamping of my perspective was that he did his podcast for 9 years before getting a single ad on the podcast. He did his podcast for 9 years before making a single dollar off of his podcast. Okay. And that was a lot for me. I mean, I have still not made a single dollar from this podcast. And that's obviously not the intention, or we would have failed a long time ago. We would have quit a long time ago. And we've talked about this a lot. It's a long journey. Right? This isn't a 1, 2, 3 year thing. This is a 10, 15 year thing. Because I'm passionate about it. But hearing him say that, hearing one of the best one of the most popular podcasters in the world So it was 9 years before I made a single dollar off this, and it was awesome. Was really reinforced what we're doing here. And I realized I felt a little guilty because I have been forcing certain aspects of the podcast, like the Patreon. The Patreon where you can subscribe to the podcast, monthly subscriptions, and get extra behind the scenes content. Should I really be pushing a Patreon at the 1 year mark? Right? Do I deserve that support? Do I put enough work into the Patreon to get that money? Now, am I rushing things? I don't think it's bad. I don't think there's any, it's not malicious, right? I'm just doing this because I want to constantly improve the podcast. But are we rushing things? Is really how I'm thinking about this. So it really seeing this interview with Jordan. He's an interviewer similar to Joe Rogan, but a little more professional and studied up on his clients. I don't think it's any better or worse than something like the Joe Rogan experience. I think it just affects a different niche, a different population. But hearing someone like Jordan talk about this really forced me to take the chill pill. It forced me to sit back, relax, and be comfortable with where we're at and nestle in, right? I need to get a little cozy because we're going to be here for a while. Do I really need a new fucking camera? I could, but I really need that money for the things right now. Right? I could use a new computer first. So in the case that this thing shits out on me, I can still record podcast episodes. So it's just like, it forced me to reevaluate my goals and my direction and realize this is a long journey, right? You have to love it. Another thing he says, if you turn it into a job too early, if you try to monetize it, if you try to make money out of your passion too early, you're going to fail. You're going to get tired. You're not going to enjoy it as much anymore. All right. Treat whatever you're doing, whatever endeavor you're on as a hobby. Okay. If you truly love it, you'll be able to treat it as a hobby and sustain that for long periods of time. Okay. And that's where we're at, and that's where we're going. One of the biggest challenges to this perspective, though, is that people that come into the podcast, people that are curious about what we're doing here, always ask me, how much money do you make? How do you monetize that? How are you going to make money off that? How's that sustainable? And that puts a very unneeded, unwanted pressure, right? Oh shit. Yeah. How do I make money off this? No. That's not what it's about. That is not what it's about. Okay. And speaking of money, guys, this idea of this money culture of the area I'm in, the Scottsdale, Phoenix area, and we've talked about it a lot in the past. Talking about buying a car and feeling like I need to get a BMW to fit in, to not be a peasant in my area. Okay. This idea that it's just forcing me, it's kind of pushing me into this materialistic niche where I am kind of focused on objects. I want things. And I'm really happy to say that I'm finding myself out of this cave right now. All right. I'm becoming calloused. Okay. My brain I'm starting to get out of that really weird rut I was in where I was like, wow, this guy has a fucking Lamborghini. I wonder how he got that. Did he get lucky? Was he born into that? Now, guys, I've seen so many fucking dudes with neck tats and Lamborghinis that it's all the same to me. Right? I've seen so many dudes with Porsches come into the restaurant I work at and just struggle and just be extremely negative and be having a shitty day. Right? I've seen enough dudes with Aston Martins come into my restaurants with a shitty woman. Right? She looks attractive, but she is just a bitch. Okay? I'm not trying to be mean here. My point is that, money, Porsches, nice cars, all this stuff doesn't make you a happier person. It doesn't get you the best girls. It doesn't build the best families. It's not the answer. Okay. And it's becoming so obvious to me, right? It's not about who's lucky, who's not. It's not even on the table. It's not even in our equation of how we make the most out of the human experience. And this is how I'm starting to feel. And I'm really happy that I've gone through this because the last couple months were fucking rough. I would get in my total Lincoln, drive down to work in Scottsdale, and drive by 6 or 7 different foreign $100,000 cars and feel really shitty about myself. It wasn't a good time. Okay. I felt embarrassed, to be honest with you. And it was not good. Now I don't give a fuck. I'm being very transparent with you guys. For whatever reason, I had to trudge through that mud. Trudge through that state of really figuring out my relationship and what my stance is on wealth. Okay. So I'm good now. I'm absolutely good now, and I'm really happy about where we're at mentally. Uh, I am starting to think about moving out of the area. Not necessarily right now. Obviously, I have to finish graduate school, but where is my next move? Do I want to be in Arizona? Do I want to be in this area? When I went home for Christmas in Nebraska. It was a breath of fresh air. Okay, it wasn't. I got off the plane, and it wasn't 15 seconds before two strangers were making jokes about farming equipment. I'm not saying that I want to move back to Nebraska. I don't think I ever will anytime soon. But there is different areas of the country, different areas of the world bring different aspects to the table. Okay. Bring different aspects to the table. And that's why somewhere like Texas might be very attractive to me, right? You have the warmer weather, but you also have a good roots in hospitality. And that is something I'm looking for. That's something I don't see a lot of here in Arizona, especially in this Tempe, Scottsdale area, right? It's more money focused, more material driven. And I'm just constantly thinking about, where's the best move? Where's the best move for a family, right? If I wanted to start a family, where would I want to be when that happened? If I wanted to settle down with a woman, where would I want to be when that happened? So I'm starting to think about this, and the picture is starting to become painted because I am developing. I am, like this relationship with materialism in the vibe of this area and so on. So we're making it further. We're making strides. And yeah. And yeah, as a result of my freedom, my breaking the shackles of materialism and the want for wealth and nice cars, I've decided that I want to get, for my next car, a 1993 Chevy 1500. Okay? The 1993 to 1998 body style of the Chevy 1500, for whatever reason, is so fucking beautiful for me. I'm not a big fan of old cars. Okay? I really enjoy the new modern Ferraris and all those body styles. I'll enjoy that. But there is something about those older Chevys, those boxy models, that just gives me a really good vibe. Gives me a really good vibe. And I would be proud to drive that thing every day. It's like a little rootage of Nebraska, like a little taste of Nebraska on the farm. I bring in a little bit of my upbringing to the state of Arizona. If I could rock this thing, it'd be fantastic. Now the problem is there's not a single one within 200 miles of me, and there are thousands in Nebraska. So my family's looking back home to see what we could do. Right, it'd be like my little passion project. Right, I'd obviously have to get some like a new sound system in it, maybe fix it, get some new wheels on it, and so on. But it'll still have that classy look. And I think that would be a really, really great vibe. You imagine, those windows that you crank down? There is something so fucking beautiful about going out on a sunny and 75 day and just fucking cranking your window down, guys. There's something so beautiful about it. Imagine if I got a dog. Imagine if I had a dog in a 1995 Chevy 1500. I'm cranking down the window. Then my fucking mutt has his muzzle out the other window. That's fucking beautiful. We're talking about some movies. We're talking about some movie storylines here. So to say the very least, I'm absolutely jazzed to make this happen. It's just about finding the right vehicular. Okay, finding the right one, because they're old, right? They all have like 150,000 miles on them, 200,000 miles on them. Luckily, these old machines, these old Chevys are reliable bad boys. So if we find the right one with proper maintenance, probably be pretty cheap. And I bet we could get one, fix it up, and have it all decked out under 10K. And that is a goddamn steal, guys. That is a goddamn steal. One thing I've been hearing a lot thrown around recently is the idea of ADHD. This isn't new. This is very popular, right? It's one of the most popular mental health disorders or mental disorders in the world because it's so readily diagnosed. It's so readily used as an excuse for problems with attention. It's readily used as a joke for people who can't focus. And I don't know if I've ever talked about this in the pod, so I want to dive into this. Okay. I've been diagnosed with ADHD since I was a young boy. Now, you're like, Hunter, oh, of course, every fucking human on earth has. Since I can remember at my earliest age, I have been taking medication. Not anymore, but from the earliest ages, my earliest memories, I would be taking ADHD medication in the morning. This would be your Adderalls, your Vyvanses, anything's like all this stuff. Okay, and you're like, wow, Hunter, that's probably not good for you. I'm not exactly sure. Okay, because that type of stuff affects me differently. Right? I've heard people use ADHD medicine recreationally. Okay. Adderall. People use it at parties, Vyvanse. People use it to like really hard drug addicts honestly use it. I truly believe that I have a pretty severe case of ADHD because those drugs do not affect me in a party-like manner. Okay, if I was at a party and you gave me Adderall or Vyvanse, I would instantly want to leave that party and go study. I would want to leave that party and go be productive. Right? I would want to leave that party and go use my focus on something positive, and it's generally always been like that. Here is what ADHD is, okay? ADHD, and I'm telling you from a lifelong experience, 100% diagnosed. It is 100%, like I have zero doubt in my mind. ADHD is it something that makes you hyper focused on things. Okay, so this is the problem. This is the error in when we talk about this. People think when you have ADHD, damn, you can't focus on anything, and wow, you're just screwed. You can't learn. That is not the case. It's a little more interesting than that. ADHD gives you the ability to hyper focus on things. Okay, hyper focus on things. When you are into something, interested in something, it's all you want to do and it almost consumes you. In my life, this is awesome. This effect is awesome, but it's also somewhat of a plague, right? It's that duality that we talk about all the time. When I get into the podcast, when I went to start this podcast, it is all I did for 8 to 10 hours a week. I was learning how to use Photoshop, learning how to use Adobe, every app in Adobe, spending 12, 14 hours a day researching, learning new skills, and building, creating logos, planning things out, planning episodes, writing for episodes. It is the only thing I wanted to do. That ADHD, that hyper focus was helping me. The problem is other things around me. I need to get groceries. My mom wants to talk to me on the phone. I have to go to work today. And what ADHD does in those situations is it make those completely uninteresting. If you try to move out of whatever you're hyper focused on, in this case, the podcast, it is almost impossible for me to do anything else. It is almost impossible for me to do anything else. It's almost impossible for me to go into work because all I'm thinking about is the podcast. And this is really the problem with ADHD. If you're not interested in something, it is almost impossible for you to develop in it, to learn about it, to perform in that area. Okay? And personally, what I experience is I experience waves. I experience little pockets of where I jump from thing to thing. Right? It's hard for me to focus the passion of my mind. Okay? This week, I may be incredibly focused on the podcast and making a new logo. And in 4 days, for whatever reason, maybe a new video game comes out. And it looks fun to me. And I hop on. If I enjoy that game, it all flips instantly. Right? I completely forget about all the podcast work I'm doing. And now I'm researching this video game for 6-8 hours, staying up till 2 a.m. Waking up straight out of bed playing it. It's this, and this is where I read a book called The ADHD Advantage, and this is why I think this is important to talk about, because you can weaponize it. You can weaponize something like ADHD, and I believe, or I'd like to think, that you can weaponize almost any health disorder, any type of, because there is a duality to it. Maybe that might be a far claim, and now that I put it out there, I am kind of second guessing it. But I would like to think that there's at least some slight positive in most imbalances mental brain chemistry like that of ADHD. Okay, because when I do hyper focus on something, I believe when I get that ADHD obsession with something, I believe that it makes it much easier for me to become the best at that thing, for me to excel. The problem is the sustainability of that, right? The ADHD brain is more likely than not to find something else within the next 1 to 2 weeks that to hyper focus on. So I don't think when we talk about ADHD, I don't think that it's this problem of no, I can't ever focus on anything. I'm fucked and I can't succeed in anything. I think it's a problem of how do I weaponize the hyper focus, these little streams of just obsession that I get in? And for me personally, I have found myself in a very, very good place with this. Okay. I do skip around from things week to week to week, and my obsession changes. I'm all over the place. But here's the deal. I have very healthy obsessions that I jump from. All right. 1 week I will be obsessed with the pod. All right. Maybe that lasts for 7, 8 days. I kind of lose interest. And now all of a sudden I am just fucking hyper focused on nutrition and I'm buying books off of Amazon and just reading them front to back like a fucking madman. It sounds crazy, but this shit happens because my brain just hyper focuses. Right? Maybe then I'll jump from that to building a new computer. And I'm going to learn everything about computers and I'm going to build this thing from the ground up. All these things, all these potential hyper focuses, all this maybe seemingly unproductive ADHD, attention flipping is all focused into the same funnel, right? It all comes back to the same thing, right? I build computers for the podcast. My obsession with nutrition, these nutrition ruts I get in, benefit me immensely health-wise, right? It all comes back to a positive growth. Like it all moves us upwards. Okay. So it's a really interesting thing. It's a really interesting thing. And luckily I don't take medication anymore. And one of the biggest reasons is because it nerfs me somewhat. My brain 100% performs better on ADHD medications like Vyvanse. I become a superhuman when it comes to production and work and writing research papers and being the best scientist ever. Right? If I just took Vyvanse every day, I'd be the best fucking nutrition and exercise science on earth, I swear to God. The problem is it turns me into a robot. Right? I can't talk as well. I can't articulate as well. I'm not as focused. I'm not as playful. I'm not really interested in anything other than moving the meter up, right? Getting more skill points, getting better at certain things and making progress. All right. So I find myself when I take those medications getting a little bit robotic. Being in my head a little bit, not wanting to talk to people, just wanting to be productive, and it's not the best for me. It's not the best for me. Now, luckily, we got good at finding ways. How do I get myself interested in learning about something? How do I find value? How do I somewhat control this ADHD hyper-focused scope on certain things that I would like? And I think it's figuring out what gets me going about that specific topic. Right? Why would I want to learn how to create a logo on YouTube for the podcast? Well, I did some research and it turns out that graphic designers cost $20 an hour. So if I can teach myself how to make this logo, I'm pretty much saving myself $200, $300. Holy shit. $200, $300. Boom. I'm off to the races. And now all of a sudden, 6 hours later, I'm a master at Photoshop. It's these type of things. Finding how I can incentivize my brain. It's all about a trick about how I can point this ADHD beam of focus in good direction. And it's worked out for me, guys. It's absolutely worked out for me. One thing I've had a relationship with recently is this idea of people holding their ideas and stances and opinions really close to themselves, right? Very personally, right? This is not a surprise. When you get into an argument with someone and they have a different opinion than you and things become heated, right? You guys actually get into an argument. I think it's so, how strange is this first off? Okay. We have ideas, and once we say ideas, now for whatever reason, our brain thinks this is ours. This is a part of me, right? And we want to defend it. It may not even be right, but we want to defend it because it's us. And if we get proved wrong, if our point gets shown to be stupid, we're embarrassed and we take it personal. And this makes sense somewhat, right? Especially if you're putting a lot of time into opinions. Let's say you have a certain opinion on poverty because you grew up in a trailer park and you really struggled when you were younger. And now that you're older, you have this very fine-tuned opinion and someone challenges it. It makes sense that you would take it a little personal because it is a part of you somewhat. You've spent years and years and years learning and tuning it and developing it. So yeah, you should defend it because you might have some reason in there. But what I don't understand, guys, what I don't understand is why people hold ideas and stances very close to themselves that they have put no effort into retrieving. Right? And what do I mean by this? Why is it that someone will read one article about COVID-19 and defend what that article told them until the day they die? Right? Why will someone take that fucking sentence they read 6 hours ago and put it into their back pocket like it's a part of their human? Defend what they learned in that article like they spent their entire life trying to get the answer. It's so strange. That shallow defending, that shallow attachment to opinions is very, very strange to me, guys. I don't really understand. And I've been seeing a lot of it, especially with the COVID stuff. It's like, why are you attached to these COVID ideas? Why is anybody trying to defend one side of COVID? Aren't we just trying to figure out what the fuck is going on? Aren't we just trying to get out of this pandemic? Right? Why do you need to sit here and tell me why I shouldn't wear a mask? Why do I have to defend why? It's so rough, guys. And we're getting into the weeds here a little bit because then we get into false information and influences on why people think certain ways. I don't understand why here's the problem I have with this. If you're defending your answer, you must, to some extent, think that your answer is right and that you put in enough work to get that answer. But some people are not putting in that effort. Some people are putting in little to no effort whatsoever. It's so strange that at the end of this road, you read one article and now you're willing to fucking go to the death to tell someone they shouldn't wear a mask or to tell someone they should wear a mask. And I just think it's fucking juvenile, guys. I think it's fucking juvenile. And one of the last things I want to talk about, guys, is the way we look at famous people. This is one of my biggest pet peeves. It grinds my gears. If it's brought up in a conversation, I will leave, exit the conversation. If you're talking to me about this, I will find a way to get out of the talk. Okay? If we're having a really in-depth conversation and you want to talk to me about, oh my God, I met Larry Fitzgerald and he fucking like touched my shoulder, I'm going to end that conversation. I do not understand why people put famous, well-known people on a pedestal. Okay, I kind of understand, but I don't relate. Okay, that's the better phrase to use here. I do not relate. It is so fucking annoying. I hate. Here's how I take this. When I hear someone talking about, yeah, my roommate is the dietitian for Larry Fitzgerald, and dude, his dog is so crazy. And when he came over in a Porsche, and like he said, "What's up, bro?" Like they're defining everything he said and how he talks. And when I hear someone talking about that, I think very, very negatively about that person. To be honest with you, I feel sad for that person because if they're talking in this way, they have completely separated themselves from someone like Larry Fitzgerald. You can hear by the way they're talking. They're worshiping them almost. It is very odd. They're worshiping him, putting him on a pedestal. It is very obvious that you are not even on the same plane as this person. You are elevating to them person. This person is no longer a human to you. They're this warlord, this man on a mountain glowing in the light. And it's so fucking sad to see people to do that, right? I think that's so sad for me. When I see Larry Fitzgerald, I see a human. I see a human that had that can jump high and that had a couple good opportunities because he worked hard. There's really nothing special about him. And a lot of these famous people, Go talk to them, and it'll be very lackluster because they're a normal fucking human. Okay, they're a normal fucking human. They just happen to get the ability to jump high and be recruited at the age of 17 by one of the talent coordinators at Arkansas State University. My point is, there's nothing really that special about these people. They're fucking humans. And you should look at them just like you. You can get to that level. You can be the best at what you do. You can be the best in your field. You can be going to meetings and talking. And I just think if you're worshiping famous people, if when you think about famous people, you get nervous or you have them on a pedestal, then there is a serious issue with the way you think about yourself and where you are going in your life. Okay? I'm going to say this again because I think it's extremely important. If you worship certain people on this earth, famous people, if you have them on a pedestal, if you get nervous around them, if you want to talk about what they said and what they do and what they were driving and everything that encompasses them, if you just want to, sneak up on them, get a little more of them. All right, this is getting real sketch. This is getting a little iffy here. All right. My point is, if you're worshiping these people, there is a serious issue with the way you think about yourself and the way you approach life and think about your future. Okay, these people are just humans. We are all humans. Okay, we are all on a mud ball. We're all flying through space. Okay, my point here in saying this is don't take people too seriously. Okay, we're all trying to figure this out. We're all, even the smartest fucking people on this earth don't have it figured out. Even the smartest people on this earth have messy fucking kitchens and can't do their dishes. Okay? They say everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time, but guys, it goes much further than that. These people struggle just like you do, no matter how much money they have, no matter how many women they have. They all question text messages they send when they're drunk, right? It's rough, guys. I see people who worship famous people, who put them on this pedestal and talk about them as gods. And it's very sad to see. It's very sad to see because I think it speaks volumes about how you perceive yourself, right? To me, that says you don't think you can be anywhere near that. You don't think you could ever work with someone like that. You don't think you could ever have a conversation with someone like that. Now, I understand being a fan of someone. I understand appreciating someone's craft and what they do. I appreciate Joe Rogan's craft. I appreciate what he does. I think he's very talented. Right? I appreciate Theo Vaughn's comedy and his craft and the way he's a wordsmith and his ability to just make a catchy phrase out of almost any situation or thought. But this doesn't mean that I'm sitting here, obsessing over them and putting them on a pedestal. I don't see them on a pedestal. I see them as a human that I would love to sit down and talk to. I see them as an older individual with the right amount of experience that I can look and gain from. But I just hate when we start to put these people on pedestals. It's really sad, not only for us guys, but for those people. It fucks people up because it's not right. It's not right at all, guys. If y'all want to call in, leave a voicemail for the podcast. The number is 602-892-4371. That is the Interplanetary Monkeys hotline. Call in, get involved, leave a message. I'm not going to answer the phone. Leave a message about anything from creationism to your favorite color of shoe, guys. I really don't mind. I just want to hear who's listening and have conversations with you guys, develop our perspectives and keep things going. Yeah, call in. What are some things we could talk about? Call in. What are some New Year's resolutions you guys are doing? I know I kind of shit on the idea of resolutions last week, but there is some value in it. We always talk about tangibility and things, having tangible results, having a tangible change of year, a big event. I think it's very valuable from us making moves. What are some New Year's resolutions you guys are doing? DM me. You don't have to call into the podcast. DM me on Instagram, on Facebook, whatever. Just let me know. Talk to me. I'd like to talk about some fan-driven content next week. Okay. Some fan-driven content next week. Guys, and to really bring this full circle, The biggest podcaster in the world didn't make money off his podcast until year 9. My point in saying this is not to be like, okay, well, we have to push back our money making. No. Even if we started making money today, it would be almost irrelevant compared to the other 2 jobs we work. My point in saying this is that anything that is extremely fruitful is always going to be hard to start. Okay. What Joe Rogan, what Jordan Harbinger have done, this idea that they literally just talk into a microphone. I'm just going to boil it down to make this point a little stronger. They talk into a microphone, be 100% themselves, and get paid a lot of money to do so. They've managed to monetize it. You don't do something that seems so simple and juvenile for 1 year and become the best at it. Okay, these things that seem so crazy, these things that are, these guys make money off this. This guy plays video games and people watch him and he makes $150,000 a month. These type of things take time. Okay, and this is something that I strongly believe in that might be useful for people listening. Okay. You have a community out there in the world. Whether you want to be a Twitch streamer, whether you want to be a YouTuber, whether you want to have a talk show online, whether you want to have a podcast, there are a large amount of people out in the world that share the same views as you who would enjoy listening to you talk. Chances are, I'm more likely to be right than wrong here in most cases. Okay, at the very least, there are 7 billion people on this earth, probably nearly 8 billion now. At the very least, there are 50,000 people who would listen to your YouTube channel, watch your stream. But why is it that when you start these projects, you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, you grow slowly? Why are only 30 people listening? Why are only 100 people listening? If there are 50,000 people in this world that are interested in your content, that share your point of view, because there are. There has to be. Just by the fucking pure chance of it. Okay, why are only 30 people listening? Because they haven't found you yet. How do they find you? Time. Okay, that is why it takes 9 years to make money off a podcast. That's why it takes 6 years of posting videos every single week to YouTube to hit 100,000 subscribers. It's not about whether you're talented or not, or you have this specific sauce. In some cases, maybe it is. But bottom line, the truth for everyone, it's about consistency and finding your community. Your community has to find you. And if you quit after 49, 50, 51, 52 weeks, you're not going to allow them to find you. All right? The content has stopped. Yeah, I believe that everyone listening to this, that almost everyone on earth has a community out there. All right? And some people will step up for your community. Some people will step up to be a leader and create something for your community, right? If you're kind of like a casual, somewhat logical dude who likes to hunt, Joe Rogan stepped up for you and made a podcast where he talks to hunters. All right. If you're interested in comedy and you're from Southern Louisiana and you kind of grew up in poverty and you really enjoy a guy who's good with words, Theo Vaughn stepped up for you in your community. All right. There are people that step up within certain niches, within certain groups, with certain interests, and they take the cake and get all the pride and fame and kind of lead it and get all the money. But we all are in some type of community. We're in large communities. We like chicken. We're in small communities. We're interested in astrophysics. You can always step up for your community and create something, right? It's going to take time. It's going to be a long journey. It's not going to be quick. You're not going to get instant gratification. But over time, I believe that if you stick with it, you can create something beautiful, guys. And that is really what we're doing here. What is the community? I have no fucking idea. People, young adults who overthink everything. It's probably the community. What did it start out as? A short form science podcast. All right, that's a hyper niche, very small community. So yeah, guys, I believe there is hope for anybody and anything that wants to be created, right? You think someone who talks about the uses of a podcast about coconut flour, would not be that popular. Well, there are a lot of fucking people on this earth that are interested in coconut flour and cooking. As odd as that sounds to you. If that podcast went for 9-10 years, well, first off, they'd probably switch the topic of the podcast because there's not that much content in coconut flour, but they would have probably brought that community together because they gave it enough time. I really think it's hard to fail something, creative endeavors, if you do them consistently over 10, 15 years. I really don't see how there's any chance you will not succeed. Okay, bottom line, and I'm really glad that Jordan Harbinger, that I listened to that video or that podcast earlier this week, because I didn't want to. I just randomly clicked on it, and there was so much fucking value in it, guys. So much goddamn value. All right. Once again, the Interplanetary Monkeys hotline is 602-892-4371. Call in. Tell me what your New Year's resolution was. Tell me how 2020 was for you and what you're looking forward to 2021. Tell me about literally anything. Tell me who's calling, where you're from, what you enjoy about the podcast, what you hate. Leave a voicemail. Let's get involved, guys. Let's get some viewership involvement and keep this train rolling. All right? Alrighty. That's it for this week's episode of Interplanetary Monkeys. This is Hunter Klein, and you bet your A you'll hear from me next week. Peace, peace.